You just had a nice little run ski.
Oh yeah, baby.
You want to tell Gainz Nation what you just did?
Gainz Nation. I didn't die. I'm alive. I don't know how, but I'm alive. But I did just run 7.07 miles, something like that.
Yeah.
It felt really amazing. It just rained in Arizona like 2 days ago.
That's awesome.
So it like cooled off a little bit. Like it was like 95 over the weekend, but it rained 2 days ago. So it's like what, high 70s here. So pretty cool. But yeah, it was still hot. And I did it in a 9 minute and 30-second pace miles, dude. Holy cow.
I know. I'm really proud of you, buddy.
I called Roman. I called Roman because I told him I was going to be late to this because I took the run before recording this, of course, leaving myself no time to do anything. But I was calling him. I'm like, I'm running late, but you know, I'll be there. But I want to get under 10-minute pace. I don't know, but dude, it felt really good. Yeah. You know what? I guess the hardest part, the most challenging part of like the process of running right now is getting up there in the miles. And I don't have anything to hold like a water bottle. I don't have anything. You know, I literally wore Samantha's fanny pack so I could put my phone and my keys in there. Because like I don't like wearing my phone in my pocket. Like the idea of like my fat phone slapping against my thigh and keys slapping against my thigh the whole time. So I wore Sam's like it's like a shiny fanny pack too. So it's like hilarious. You got this big old dude rocking shirtless with a fanny pack running around Arizona just like killing it but no, it's honestly it wasn't that bad. Honestly, obviously we're gonna probably talk about it today, but like last week I wanted to hit 7 miles, I didn't. And I say it's challenging because I was talking about the water bottle part and like not being able to carry too much things with me. Also, Arizona doesn't believe in like outdoor bathrooms. So I even ran on a canal trail, which there's like a little canal and it's like paved and stuff. And it's really nice. But there's like no bathrooms. So that's like another issue of mine is I have such a crappy bladder where if there's like I usually had to run, I just had to just go to the bathroom like every couple miles because of the fact that I just have like a crappy bladder. And I probably just drink so much water. So I try to salt load before the run because of the fact that I don't want to lose so much water, aka go to the bathroom. But thankfully, I was able to hold it before I got back. I mapped it out perfectly. But see, the thing is, last week, back to my main point, I didn't get 7 miles last week because I took the week off before. And the last 2 times I've been running on a treadmill because like I'm just scared that, you know, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom or, you know, I'm going to get to the point where like I'll be dehydrated, which I shouldn't have to worry about it because I hydrate quite a bit throughout like every day. I'm saying that like that's like me waking up in the morning. It's hydration. It's like the next thing of waking up. But I couldn't get 7 miles. I expressed that to Roman last week. It just was really rough. And I think I got to the point where, you know, the treadmill is always going to be good to get the miles in, but I bet Roman could agree with this too. It's just, there's something about like running outside and getting fresh air, and it might be brutal because the conditions of the road. So, you know, you might be running on janky concrete, janky grass, janky dirt, or really nice pavement. But see, the thing is, the idea of like, I got to see horses, like over here is like city country still in Arizona. It's like the newer part of Phoenix. Like I saw horses when I was running. I saw chickens. I saw roosters. I saw dogs. So like, that's probably the easiest and best motivation for me because like, I'm very like, you know, focused on everything that I could it distracts me, and like it's like beautiful scenery that I could look at. But today was nice because honestly, I think I could have ran like 8 or 9 miles, not 8 or 9 more miles, but 8 or 9 miles, and would have been fine. But see, the thing is, what we're going to talk about today is it's one thing that you could push yourself to it, but it's another thing is if it's like a new modality of training, it's probably not always the smartest thing to push it to that limit. For example, which I'm probably talking too much already, but if we were powerlifting or bodybuilding and our goal is to bench 135, and say if you bench like 100 or 115 pounds, and like say if like you could bench it 2 or 3 reps, maybe that's a good indication. Maybe you could hit 135, but you don't want to push it to the 4th or 5th rep just because you think you can to hit 135. Same for me. Like if I'm practicing for this marathon, like obviously 8 or 9 miles would be good towards the training, but I don't want to push it to the point where next week I try running and I get to that point where I'm sitting there stressed out of my mind and like crying that I can't even hit 6 miles, which I was texted Roman about like right away. And one of our friends, Bill, which is like a pretty big runner. Shout out to Bill if you're listening. And he's an awesome guy and he's a very healthy guy himself. So, but Roman, other than that, let's talk about you real quick, and then maybe we'll get back into like the subject of what we're talking about today.
Sounds good.
Did all that make sense? Was I just ramble it on?
No,
I try not to ramble on as much.
No, it's all good stuff. I'd say for like the person that you were saying like that could push it to like 4 or 5 reps. I guess it's like very context dependent. So if you were maxing out at like the 3rd rep and you weren't sure if you could get another one, unless you have a spotter and unless like you're maybe in like the last week of a microcycle where you can like, deload or whatnot. So like allow for like, greater time for recovery. It might not be worth the risk to go for it. Or if you do go for it, it's like how much assistance are you getting, So yeah, I mean, it's definitely like context dependent, but if you're at like RPE, like 6 or 7, meaning you still have like 3 or 4 reps left to go at 115 by 3, and you want to go for 5, and the plan was 3, but you're really feeling it for whatever reason, I'd say you could go for a couple more, especially if the training plan called for it.
I think next time to push me to like the 26 mile marker, I think I'm gonna call Roman, and like every 30 seconds, I want Roman to say lightweight, yeah, buddy. Can you do that for me for like 2 hours straight? Just stay on the phone with me, lightweight, yeah, buddy.
We'll just make a recording. I'll just make a recording and I'll just loop it.
Honestly, though, I was on a side note about this, which we could talk about eventually. Obviously, Roman and I are not really versed in the subject, but I just got done listening to a dopamine episode on the Huberman Lab podcast, and I did reflect on it a lot, and also obviously as a long-time trainer, like Roman and I kind of keep this in mind when we do train. But pretty much he was talking about like the idea of you shouldn't use dopamine within like your training modalities, obviously with other stuff too, but like with the Gainz podcast, I'm going to definitely only cater to training. Because we talk about training here, not really too much of anything out of that scope, and it's always back to fitness. But he was talking about hey, if you're using music for working out, if you're using pre-workout before you work out, if you eat a couple of things of candy before you work out, like all those are giving you like a dopamine drip before that workout. And to the point where you're going to kind of lose sense of why you're doing that. And it's not to say that you're not to say that you're going to stop doing it, but one may lose motivation or one may not experience the same dopamine trip that you would do it if your mind was into the moment. So that kind of came back to me when I was on the treadmill last week, because me not liking the run, me not liking the run. Okay, so I'm not even speaking English that well right now, but for me, I don't really like to run. I wasn't a big runner. Like, yes, I was a basketball player, but I never really was a big runner. So last week, maybe it's because I wasn't too motivated, or maybe I should have took the day off and then like ran another day. But I put on a podcast and I had my headphones in. And since I was in the clubhouse in my apartment complex, I had ESPN going in the background. So I tried using both those methods to kind of distract myself. And as you could tell, it didn't work. Like last week, I was supposed to hit 7 miles. So it kind of, I just listened to that podcast like yesterday or 2 days ago, but it kind of reflects on like Antoine, maybe you shouldn't use all those like distractions for your training. Maybe you should just try to live in the moment and kind of understand why you're doing it in the first place type deal. So, that's what you kind of have to look at. And I know Roman and I do it all the time, where there's periods where Roman and I don't even have like caffeine before training. Sometimes we won't lift without music. We'll lift without music on, stuff like that. And we've talked about in the past, but I'm just saying, like, it was like, I was trying to hella distract myself, Roman, like to the point where I was even focusing on running. And I'm like, you know what? One of these days, if I do this, I'm just going to follow this. I'm going to be one of those like, America's Most Funniest Family Videos. And I'm going to fall on the treadmill and like just smack my whole body against the wall behind me, because the fact that I was trying to distract myself just to run 7 miles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely think we should linger on this point for a little bit, and then also talk a little bit about like impulsivity too, because that was definitely something that ran through my mind recently. But on like the whole like dopamine front, or like chasing like the good feels, or like some sort of like a high or whatnot, not necessarily like a drug high, but like runner's high or whatever it might be. I would definitely say time and place, right? Because maybe that's actually exactly what you needed. Maybe you needed to have a little bit of distraction. Maybe that is what helped to like motivate you to get through. But the question that I would beg is, over time, are you always relying on that? What happens if you're training for a race, for example? You always rely on listening to podcasts, music. So that's all fine and well. Maybe that actually helps you enjoy the experience more. But what happens when you come to race day and your phone dies? And now
you're like me, and AirPods aren't even a good running headphone. Like literally, not my left one, but my right one. It was like, I don't know what it was, but like there just was sweat accumulating in my right earlobe my right ear hole the whole time. And I literally had to keep taking it out, rubbing it against my shorts, taking it out, rubbing it against my shorts. So like even that, like that's only on 7 miles. Could you imagine 19 more miles of that? Like,
yeah. So like, would that experience invalidate the whole experience for you? We can't say. That's up to the individual. But that is definitely something to consider. And then also, just from a like a productivity or like a self-betterment perspective, I do think that it's important to be able to cue into like your different bodies like signals. So once again, it's okay to listen to music, especially from like an endurance athlete perspective. It actually might help to push people. That's what I've seen like in the literature. But the thing to keep in mind is, if you're always relying on that, are you taking like proper cues? Are your breathing mechanics on point? If not, maybe you need to go like in every other time, where run A, you'll listen to music. Run B, you won't. And let's say you run 4 times a week, so you have like a ABAB running program. So Monday and Thursday you listen to music, and Wednesday, Saturday you don't listen to music on your runs.
And you know what would like another thing to like add on to your point with like doing that split and stuff like that is Andrew Huberman also like mentions, and it makes sense too, right? It's like, I think as we're in 2022, like obviously I'm gonna sound like an old man, but we have so much like distractions and like so much stuff that won't let you get bored, where the point that our like tunage now is to like always not be bored. So an example is like, it's crazy. It's like, remember when you first flew on an airplane? And my first flight was when I was age 15. So obviously I was a late bloomer compared to a lot of people, but I just flew back from Chicago. Guess what I was doing? I was able to watch a whole damn NCAA March Madness game 10,000 feet in the air. And then when that was done, I was able to watch TV. And then when I got to land, I was able to get, obviously get in my car and go. But, there was not one point in that flight where I had to sit there and kind of like think like what I should be doing like this week, next week type deal. So it gets to the point where it's like we're just so used to it now. And I think everything just screwed into our bodies kind of like that way. It's just, there isn't a point where a lot of people could sit there and be bored for like an hour. And, and I'm trying to like go back to that. Like even in my lifting sessions, like I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm trying to like keep turning my music down lower and lower each session, like not turn it off completely, because see, the thing is, I get distracted. I don't like when people are talking in the gym. So like obviously like I'll have music to kind of just distract myself from hearing that. But like if no one's like talking by me and I'm about to do my set, I'll turn my music to like a quarter of the volume just so I could just like be in the moment. And I think that's like another thing too, is like as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I feel like we've taken ourselves far out of the moment. And obviously we're taking this a whole different direction of this podcast, but back to Roman's like idea is like, I think this is like the overarching, definition of why we should be doing this stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd say definitely. And that's something that my partner and I have talked a lot recently. And one piece that I want to touch upon was like the idea or the concept of like impulsivity. I've noticed that like it's very, very strong like within me. And I think part of it is because of like how technology enables us to like always be entertained. Like there's always another YouTube video to watch. There's always another song to listen to on Spotify. There's always some sort of game to play on your phone, whatever it is. And that's just like endless. But I do find myself feeling like very unfulfilled when I participate in those activities, especially if it takes me away from like maybe a special moment. So whenever that's
why you took January off, right? Like pretty much like, I was gonna say, like, I don't think you ever really kind of talked too much about it, but like that was kind of back to the point of what you did in January, right?
Yeah. The sad thing is though, like as soon as I got back to it, it's like kind of back to my old ways. I think I'm a little better. I think I've like implemented some different like strategies, but I think that although I was able to, do that and like succeed in the goal, I didn't take a lot of that to heart. And then I was just kind of like a breather before I got right back into it. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like technology does enable a certain degree of like impulsivity within ourselves. And it's so fascinating to see how deep it reaches into our lives. For example, many of you experience this as well, but I usually have a pretty good idea about like what meals I'm going to have throughout the day, depending on like what leftovers we have or whatnot. And I'm very like ad libitum with that kind of thing. But like every morning it's like four eggs and my choice of how they're cooked, maybe some cheese, maybe not. Most likely if I don't have cheese, I'll have a glass of milk, some carbs, maybe like some sourdough bread that we've like homemade, or like rice, or like some home fries that I've cooked up, and like a piece of fruit. That's like pretty standard. But when it comes to like other meals, especially depending on like what the leftovers are, and depending on how much we have for leftovers, I might be tempted to like dip into like the candy jar, metaphorically, but sometimes also like not metaphorically, in actuality. I don't know. I forget how you say that, but and that's totally fine. Well, I don't like have restrictions on candy, but it's not that, I have a thought like, oh, it would be nice to enjoy like, some candy later. It's just that it's like a powerful, overwhelming thought, like I need this and I need it now type situation. And like I think that many other people experience that with their nutrition. So they experience some degree of impulsivity, which drives their behaviors. And I think when people do that kind of thing and then you succumb to that impulse, which I do think that, I don't want to take away individuals like agency. So it's important to be able to recognize that and then say like, okay, I'm okay with recognizing this impulse, or maybe this is something I want to take a step back from and then, re-examine with a clear mind. But I do think that technology has develop these patterns within ourselves, and that people can oftentimes indulge in these impulses and then feel guilty about it afterwards. So it creates this cycle of kind of like not doom and gloom, but cycle of beating yourself up, not feeling like super great about yourself, and like working towards your fitness goals, your nutrition goals, whatever goals or outcomes that you've planned for yourself. What do you think about?
Yeah, it can, and go back on like your impulses. Like I remember when I first started, it's crazy. It's like, I'd say, since 18 years old, maybe I took it a little bit more serious afterwards, but like I'm closing in on like a decade of training. And I remember like I don't know, first 5, 6, 7 years, like I remember how much I relied on like always having to have like pre-workout before training. Like I remember like it was like second nature. It's like to the point you were saying, like, I needed it right before training or I didn't want to train. Or if I had my headphones and if they died, I wouldn't work out. It's like those things like don't even bother me anymore, to the point where it's so nice. And I think a lot of people will learn that when it comes to training, but it takes time. Because I remember I was talking to my buddy today about pre-workout, and he was telling me about this like new ZOA energy drink, or ZOA by The Rock, and like I remember like, and yes, and I still do enjoy my energy drinks here and there, right? So it's like I'm not gonna tell you I don't enjoy them, but he was telling me like before working out, and like he was telling me like this and that, and like I couldn't tell you the last time where like I cared so much about a pre-workout to the point where like I needed the perfect one, I needed the perfect tasting one, and I needed to do it before training. I mean, like just the other day, I had a half caffeinated, half decaf coffee at like 8 in the morning. I probably finished it at like 10 in the morning. So sometimes it takes me like 2 hours to drink a cup of coffee. And I trained at 5 p.m. that day. And guess what? No caffeine before the gym. And guess what? I still had a hell of a lift. I PR'd on like flat bench dumbbells with 95 pounds. I got like, I think it was like 8.5 reps. I have been counting my half reps, because when Sam's spotting me, I've been actually reaching for that next rep more than I've been putting the weight down, because I know Sam could spot me. So when I'm like, I'm halfway, and then Sam puts her hands on my forearms and then like presses the dumbbells with me, which obviously I know Sam can lift a lot of weight, but like that's 180 pounds, and I know I'm going to be doing half the work. So I just count them at half marks. But like that training day, no caffeine beforehand. So I guess like the meaning of this like episode too, we could kind of say, is how you could deal with impulses within like your training. And I think the first step is, like I was saying earlier about like the music, and Roman was saying about the music and running, is kind of calm them down a little bit. Like, obviously you don't have to go full bore. You don't, we're not saying like you shouldn't listen to music before the gym. You shouldn't take pre-workout before the gym. You shouldn't eat a candy bar before the gym. We're not saying that, because Roman and I have definitely been there. We still do those things today. Like if Roman's tired at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., or maybe earlier, like obviously Roman and I kind of cut caffeine earlier than most people. Like I don't even have caffeine after like, I think like 2:30 p.m. now. Like anything after that, like I'm just going to not have it, even if it sucks and I'm tired. But like, if you're training in the mid afternoon and you have 2 meals before your training and you train at 12 p.m. and you have a cup of coffee before working out at 12 p.m., that's totally fine. That if anything, that's great, because even with like Andrew Huberman saying it, like obviously I don't believe 100% of everything that everyone says, but like he even says like after you get your morning sunlight, you should fast like maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours before you even have caffeine. So if you're training in the mid-afternoon, like something like that's pretty easy. I train consistently at like 5 p.m. So I'm just telling you, for the people that are 9 to 5 workers and who work out after work, like maybe you shouldn't have that cup of coffee before 5 o'clock. Because the fact is, I keep seeing people, Roman and I's age. Roman's like barely barely 3 years older than me, 2 years older than me.
Yeah, something like that.
But I'm not even joking. I see people today, even people that are making good amount of money. I see it on Twitter all the time. Why can't I sleep? Why can't I sleep? And if you haven't watched one of the episode that Roman and I talked about, is if you're taking caffeine, after that 7-hour window before you go to bed, or if you're not getting any sunlight in your eyes before or when the sun rises and before the sun sets, then all that stuff is racking up, and it's just wasting away. But back to the point of the impulses, like don't think having that, like I said, if you're working out mid-morning or morning and you have that coffee or pre-workout before the gym, that's fine. What I'm saying is be cautious of the things that you're doing that could be dangerous to like the recovery aspect of training. Because if you're like still to this day, and I mentioned it so many times, people are taking pre-workout at the gym while I'm lifting at 5:30 p.m. and they are morning workers. So if they drink a can of C4, Ghost Energy, Monster, Rain, whatever the hell it is, that some of them are like 300 milligrams of caffeine, and I don't see those people chugging them at 5 p.m. I'm talking about they sip them, and usually Sam and I work out for maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, and I'll still see people with the cans next to their equipment and stuff. And we're talking that's 6 p.m. If they work at 9 a.m. the next day, they usually go to bed, I'd say at least by 11 p.m. or before. Is that going to be good for you? Like that could be an impulse right there. You could kind of stop, is learn how to kind of set yourself up for recovery instead of set yourself up for something that could, be a disaster to your training, be a disaster to your sleep, be a disaster to your recovery. And then maybe the music thing, like I said, like even do something like me. I just been slowly turning down the volume, and to the point where I could barely hear it, because I want to focus on the lifting. I want to focus on being able to talk to Sam, because like having clear communication between the spotter and the lifter has to be on point for safety reasons and for gains. And like anything else with like the impulses, like maybe like the technology thing is, like Andrew Huberman even said, like even a phone could be a dopamine hit for your training. So he even says in part of his like training, because he's a big believer on training and health and fitness, even though he's like a neuroscientist professor at Stanford, I believe. And he even says like you bringing the phone in the gym could be a dopamine hit to your workout where you're getting distracted. So maybe you stop snapping your bicep photos, but showing half your ass on Snapchat. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe you should put your phone in your like bag and like just make sure, maybe bring a notebook to write down your workouts. Instead of taking those fat old booty photos like Roman always does and sends to me. All right, that's all I wanted to say, Roman. I don't know what else you want to add, but I'm done rambling out of this.
No, I love it. That was perfect. I'd say just to like wrap it up, a synopsis is like just beware the dopamine trap. That it's okay to do all those things that Antoine mentioned, but you get to a point where you're desensitized, and I don't mean because you might be able to get desensitized from a physiological standpoint, but I mean mostly from a psychological standpoint, and that like feel good feeling doesn't hit like it used to. If your goal is still to be able to lose 10 more pounds, but because you're not feeling it any longer, there are some times where we do need to dig deep and we need to continue to push, even when we don't have that like that feel good feeling. Obviously, if you're over there like breaking your back type situation, snapping your ass up, like that's not either. So take what I'm saying in context. But you might have to review and revise your goal or what may have you. But if you're always trying to seek that like that dopamine hit, like Antoine was saying, with whatever the modality is, then it is a trap, because at some point it will run out, even if it's just temporary. So I would, in building resilience, determine ways that you can get around that. Maybe with the music piece, maybe it's that you listen to music every other set. So you take a set where you're just focusing on your breathing. You're just focusing on like, okay, it's a squat. How do my feet feel per squat? How do my knees feel? How do my hips feel? My butt feel? My back feel? How does my neck feel? My shoulders feel? Whatever it is. What is my mind saying? Is my mind like in the set, or am I thinking about what happened in work? That kind of stuff. Like try to focus in on that. I think you'll be rewarded in a different sense. You might not get that dopamine hit right away, but being able to say at the end of your workout, yeah, I felt really connected to that. That was a very purposeful and intentful session for me. Although it wasn't something that like, I got to tune into my favorite music or whatnot. I think that there's other means and other like modalities that we can experience, other feelings that we can feel while we're like in the gym or like on a run or biking, or whether it's like more mindful eating, whatever it is, and there's other gains to be had.
Or you just want to listen to your favorite guys, Roman and Antoine, on the Gainz podcast. The only thing I want to say is always dig deep. Roman said dig deeper. I just want to say always dig deep. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're on all audio and video platforms. Please check us out on Instagram. We are now on TikTok, so please follow us on TikTok. Make sure you like on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you go to Roman's channel on YouTube and subscribe. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and then we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.